I don't know if you got a chance to see this or not. Georgia's doing something in Sanford Stadium that's not happened in almost 30 years. In fact, I remember the first time this happened, and it was because of the Olympics. Georgia is, quote, restoring the hedges. This is something that we wrote about over on Dog Post. Give you a look at it real quick. UGA football restoring Sanford Stadium's famed hedges. This is the important part that the university is pointing out. The current hedges were propagated 4 years before the Olympics. That's 31 years into it. So I can assure you that the group that is over. I mean, I don't know what y'all's names are. I know some of y'all watch these videos actually, but the horticulturalists who run not just the hedges but the turf, the surface that Georgia plays on, those people do an unbelievable job. So the university is pointing out that it's going to have full soil replacement, drainage, and replanting the hedges. So it's supposed to happen and get done before G Day. Now, another thing that's happening that a lot of y'all won't really, I mean, I guess you may pay attention to, but those of us in the media, certainly it will be very noticeable for us. The press box, which has been there for, I think, since 1967, that is being moved to the upper corner of the sky boxes. So I don't know all the details in terms of how to get there, other than it's on the other side of the stadium from where I am, which is typically on the field in the closed end zone area. But that will also be a change. So G Day is a time at which a lot of things change. But I did want to talk about the hedges just for a little bit because they're such an important part of what Georgia is. A lot of places have copied that. Auburn, South Carolina. I mean, to some degree, Florida. Anywhere that has you know plants around their field, they've gotten that from Georgia. But it's noticeable at South Carolina they don't use hedges, but they use plants. I couldn't tell you what they are. But anyway, there's a distinct smell to the hedges at Georgia. My grandmother, well, my mother, grandfather, everybody my mother grew up in Towns County, which is Hiawassee, Georgia, and the hedges that were in front of the house that my mother grew up in had the same exact smell as the hedges at Georgia, and you can't. It's hard at Sanford Stadium to completely. I mean, you'd have to be right on top of the hedges, but it's a very distinct smell, and not a bad smell, by the way, a good smell, but it's a very distinct smell. And that's what I always, when I get too close to the hedges, which I'm obviously around the hedges a lot, frankly, probably more than almost anybody on earth that's not in the football program. I mean, they're there more often than I am, but I'm there a lot when they're not there to some degree because of post game and all that stuff. But anyway, the hedges are an amazing part of college football lore. The name between the hedges. That was actually Dog Post's precursor years ago, even earlier this century. Dog Post was betweenthehedges.com years and years and years and years ago, but we didn't want to infringe on any trademark possibilities that were out there with the university, so we backed down on that deal. We didn't back down. We just didn't play ball. We weren't interested in having any issues, but this is a curious thing that Georgia is talking about. They say the typical lifespan is 20 to 40 years, and they were installed during the 96 Olympics. All right, so the last game before the 96 Olympics was, of course, 1995 Auburn, believe it or not. Because if you remember, 1995 Georgia Tech was in Atlanta, and Cannon Parkman, RIP, with that sidewinding kick to win it over the Jackets on, I believe that was Thanksgiving Day. But here you can see here too. Let me just go back to this image. This is near the end zone. Okay, this is in the end zone. Actually, you can see the camera folks and then the folks right there. This is no longer like this. The hedges are much broader now. They often have cut them back some. If you remember the Tennessee game in 2011, 2001, They got pretty beat up then. But let me get back to that Auburn game in '96. Okay, excuse me, '95. So I was not at that game. It was one of the few games at that time. Well, not one of the few games, but that was a game I did not get to. For whatever reason, I can't remember necessarily. We had basketball, so I couldn't play. I couldn't be in two places at once. But uh, yeah, we had basketball for sure. So because that was November, and that there were a lot of images of that game where people were clipping the Hedges and taking him home with them, which I guess was allowed at the time because of the Hedges being removed. I was also at Sanford, believe it or not, believe it or not, for the women's gold medal game against China. It was United States against China in the summer of 1996. So there were some in Athens. There were Olympic games, so there was rhythmic gymnastics, which I went to as well. There was men's and women's soccer. I'm pretty sure it was men's and women's. I know it was women's because I went to the gold medal match, which was an overtime penalty kick win for the United States, if I'm not mistaken. I know the United States won the gold. And then there might have been one other thing. I'm not sure. Somebody from Georgia's Sports Info can correct me on that. Was any volleyball there? Or was it just rhythmic gymnastics and soccer? Well, anyway, it was weird seeing the stadium without without the Hedges. I mean, it was a strange thing to see, to be honest with you. But as it turns out, they had to have it because the corners really were the problem. Because the width of a soccer field kind of looks like it could fit in football, but it really can't. I mean, it was not quite wide enough, or not even close to wide enough. So there were some soccer at other folks. It was volleyball. So there was soccer at other places, like at the Citrus Bowl in Birmingham, at the Orange Bowl, and in DC actually. But the women's final and all the finals was in Athens. In addition, rhythmic gymnastics was at Stegman. I don't think it was called Stegman at the time. And then volleyball, which I don't know. I'm a little confused as to, because I think volleyball was also in Atlanta. I'm getting off the subject here, but the point is that the Omni. Oh my gosh, the Omni in Atlanta, Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. So the Hedges are such a big deal. I would encourage you, if you are not. Everybody doesn't go near the Hedges. Okay, I fully understand that, but any fan can get down there, and I would fully encourage you to do that. And here's what I mean. If you're on the 300 level, whatever the first game is of 2024, go down to the field. It won't be the Clemson game. It'll be the game after that. Go down to the field level and just walk around either side where the Hedges are. And, if you're in the 200 or 100, just don't go straight to your seat. See everything that's there. We've had, UGA 10 just passed away. You're going to have that in the stadium. You've got, the Hedges. There's a lot of really nice stuff on field level at Sanford that, if you're just going straight to your seats, you're missing out. And the biggest thing, I think, well, you can see the Dawg too. Not in person. They're not going to let you on the field unless you have a pass. But, poor UGA. I mean, I wonder what UGA thinks about the Hedges. Because they do not, just insider baseball here, he doesn't go to the bathroom on the field. They walk and they handle that, and then they come back. And they're, if it's hot, he's in his air-conditioned he's in his air-conditioned doghouse facility. I mean, it's an amazing. That guy is treated like complete royalty. It's amazing, but he's around the Hedges all the time, and they are a part of not just college football. Like I think when you think of I think of the Clemson at the Hill at Clemson, which is its own kind of weird thing. You got Sanford Stadium with the hedges. There's not a lot of places that have like this particular thing. Like when you think about Georgia Tech or the Swamp, they don't like. There's nothing incorporated in there. Bryant Denny or Neyland. Neyland's just huge. Death Valley. I mean, it's frightening to go to, but it's not. There's no like, oh, this. The Rose Bowl. Yes, there are plants everywhere, and Notre Dame has a few, but the Rose Bowl. I think the amazing part about the Rose Bowl, beyond the fact that the venue and all how first class the whole operation is, there are roses. The roses you see on television that are in front of the players, those are real roses. Those aren't like place setters. They pick those things. The whole thing is real. And outside the Rose Bowl, there are rose bushes. You can see them. You can. I would. You don't think you're really supposed to touch roses? I don't know how that works. But the hedges are a hardy stock. They're a very, you know, Aaron White could tell you about how flexible they are. I remember too. Speaking of Mike Bobo, which I haven't yet, but Mike, Jim Donnan, and Greg Bright. I can't remember who all was on that cover, but of the '96 media guide was New Hedges, new something or another. I mean, like it was Jim Donnan's first year, had New Hedges, and they were about to go 5-6 with a bullet. You know what I mean? So uh, Mike Mike Bobo's not throwing that ball backwards against Ole Miss for nothing. Um, that was a different time. I can assure you of that. Man, people were pissed at that game. It's not funny, but that was just a very different time at Georgia. And I don't know why that makes me laugh so much because it's not funny for but I just remember that. And that was, that part of it's that media guide cover was awesome. And then just the disaster, how difficult a slog that '96 season was. I mean, Georgia lost to Florida 47-7. It was a disaster. They weren't even competitive in some of the game. I mean, when Robert got hurt, Robert Edwards, I mean, no, Robert didn't get hurt. He got hurt in '95. I'm thinking of, okay, so '96 was, I'm just going to keep going here. '96, they lose to Southern Miss on the first game in Athens. Like, that would never happen now. They go to Columbia, turn the ball over at least 5 times. Well, at least 4 times. It might have been 5. Robert Edwards fumbling like crazy. They had that next game, I think. Now, this is going on memory here. The Texas Tech game, which was on ESPN2. That game was where, Hines flipped into the end zone thanks to Larry Brown. And they nearly went in overtime in that game. But Texas Tech missed the field goal by like that much in pouring rain. And then, they played State. They played Ole Miss because they did every year and lost to Ole Miss. That was the game after they upset Auburn. And then they beat Tech at the end of the year. But they were 5-6. I mean, that was not a good team. That was Kirby's sophomore season at Georgia. That was Mike's junior year, and it set up for a very big '97. But there was, I mean, that was not a good time in the Empire. I'll tell you, there have been moments at Georgia that were not so hot. 1996 was one of those times. Was it because of the hedges? No, it was because of everything leading up to 1996. But that was an amazing moment, and now Georgia's redoing the hedges, something that they feel like they need to do. And I can assure you, they know what they're doing over there with those hedges.